Oh dear, okay. Radio. I'm live, I think. Oh dear. Ooh. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to sunny, overcast Adelaide. For some of you, it's probably late in the evening, but this morning, well, it's bright and early. Well, not bright. Welcome to my first live video. Not the best for anxiety levels, but yeah, here I am with my first cup of tea. Hang on. Which my hubby got me, my first cup of tea for the day. So why are we here today? We're actually here to celebrate 30 years of steampunk. But wait, I hear you say steampunk's been around a lot longer than 30 years, and you're correct. Steampunk has been around a lot longer, emerging in visual and written form. So you've got 1979, you had Morlock Night and Uber Skates in 83, Homunculus in 86, Infernal Devices by KW Jetta in 87, and earlier still Michael Moorcock wrote stories about steampunk with steampunk elements, enshrining airships in the as yet unnamed genre. His stories were an alternate history, not necessarily set in the Victorian era, like Warlord of the Air, Land of the Leviathan and the Steel Tsar, and that was between 71 and 82. Television tinkered with steampunk. As early as 1965, there was a show called Wild Wild West, which was a television series before it was a movie, and that started on the 17th of September 1965. It's my birthday. Shh, don't tell anyone. So I think it was just meant to be that I was supposed to be into steampunk, so that was really cool. I use my hands a lot, I'm so sorry. So it's April. And officially, steampunk celebrates its 30th birthday because it was an April edition of the Locus in 1987 that KW Jetta actually termed the term steampunk. So that's that thing, and it's back to front, so I'll have to edit that in later. I'll actually pop that in the comments as well. Let's see if I can do that. How do I do that? Technology and I don't necessarily agree, so you'll have to. So the quotes turned up in the actual letter that he wrote to. Oh, it's popped up on my screen. I don't know whether it's popped up on your screen. So the letter that he wrote to Locus was where the term was first found to be written, and so there's other places around the world celebrating 30 years of steampunk, but in Australia, well, New Zealand, if they had done something, yay! Hello, Kat Douglas. They get to do it first, we get to do it first, so we can make it last 2 days, but not me. I'm going to be sleeping after all this. So today we actually celebrate Steampunk Anniversary, the 30th anniversary of its naming day. See you later in the day, and have a good day. Okay, bye. And hello again, everyone. Lynn had her talk this morning about writers, and this afternoon I'm going to talk about, well, a few different things actually. Basically, yeah, okay, nerves. Who am I? Well, I'm Karen, obviously. I'm a writer. I do costuming. I'm an artist. I'm a photographer. And I've actually like to call myself a reimagineer, because what I'm doing is I'm reimagining historical stuff as steampunky stuff, and fantasy and other things as well. So what first intrigued me about steampunk was that it melded so many things together. So, okay, I'm a costumer, and I have been a costumer since the early 80s, and I'm talking really early 80s. I used to do, well, we still do it, but D&D, and we did D&D costumes and science fiction costumes, and one of my first costumes was a Doctor Who costume, and we used to go to all the fan conventions in Brisbane and Melbourne and Sydney, and one in Canberra as well. So I'm a costume person. I can't deny that when I started seeing these gorgeous Victorian costumes, I was pretty excited. So you've got the bustles and the skirts and the corsets. So I've got some corsets here. We're lucky because with the Australian Costumers Guild, some of you may or may not have heard of it, we've got the president actually in South Australia at the moment, and we actually have the Costumers Guild Ball as well. So we've done a few corset workshops, and these are actually corsets. Oh gosh, and they're not done up. These are corsets that we've made, and this is based on a actual Victorian corset pattern, and I knew this was going to balls up. This was probably one of the first ones I made specifically for steampunk. Yeah, pretty large. Okay, so this one here, and this one ended up becoming part of a steampunk aviator costume and a Doctor Who sort of crossover costume. We've just talked a bit about crossovers just before. So this one actually has the proper lacings where you lace it in the middle so it goes at the waist and takes the it's there anyway. So that's the first one. Okay, and my most recent costumes, corsets, are actually under the bust corsets. And this one, because I love this material, so this one here actually goes under the bust like that, which you probably can't see. Okay, and that's my matte one, and you've probably seen some pictures of this floating around recently. I've been, actually, a friend of mine, George Ivanos, who writes books, children's books and stuff like that. He's got this Doctor Who coat, and I absolutely love this coat, and I've been wanting to make a Doctor Who coat for ages, but I tend to get really hot, so it would be very, very hot. So instead I made a TARDIS corset. Yay! So that goes again under the bust with a skirt. I think I showed a picture of that before, and I'll post some more pictures again. And my favourite one, okay, so my favourite one is my Union Jack waist. There you go. So who needs a waistcoat when you've got a Union Jack corset? Okay, so that's what. Ow. So costuming. Okay, so first of all, in the very early 90s, I got into the SCA, which is Society for Creative Anachronism, and I did a lot of historical costuming as well. And I did a lot of research into that, and for about 10 years I concentrated on 1560s Medici clothing, and I made a lot of those with period. Uh-oh, was that a spire or a? Yeah, yeah. We just caught a, what was it? A huntsman or a wolf?
Probably a huntsman.
Yeah, it's the weather down here, so we've got huntsmen in the house again. So sorry, people who don't like spiders. Yeah. So what was I saying? Historical costuming. So I did a lot of 1560. 65 dresses, particularly Medici Florentine clothing, and I actually did the research into it and made them out of period techniques, and did a lot of hand sewing with the bodices and stuff like that. Luckily in 2008 I got to go to the Florence Costume Colloquium, where it was a tribute to Jenna Arnold, was bringing out the latest book posthumously, and I got to talk to people who do clothing in museums, costumers, archaeologists. It's exciting. And we got to go to the museums and see the real thing, and actually see underneath the hems of the real thing. So I get excited about historical costuming. So first of all, I see these gorgeous Victorian costumes, and I'm going, oh, something else. So because I had been doing the Florentine costuming for 10 years, I'd been there, sort of done that, and I was looking for something else to do. And seeing these costumes, I thought, oh, I can actually look at Victorian costuming. So what I did was, I actually did some research, and I made a bum pad thing, like a little thing, and I couldn't find horsehair to put in, so I cheated. I used netting. So, but that's actually based on a period one that goes on your, it's my husband. If I say, does my bum look good in this? The answer is
look big in this.
Yes. Does my bum look big in this? The answer is
yes.
Yes. Okay. So costuming got me there. Okay, so I got the fun of doing costuming because I love archaeology and I love historical research. So I got costuming, historical research, and then I had the fun of adding fantasy bits. So I got to go, oh, what if I did this and what if I did that? Because I also loved fantasy and Doctor Who and all these different things. So what I can do is I'm going to show you a few different bits and pieces.
Incoming message.
Because I posted a picture earlier about steampunk pirates. So this one actually is a shoulder bit there that goes on like that with my friend Henry the Octopus. Yes, I know it's a Wiggles reference, but it wasn't actually. And that was part of my pirate ones. It's actually articulated, so it can be used as well. And oh, sorry, the area's not big enough to have everything. And one of my favourites is my pair of wings. Whoops. And just knock everything over here. So this is my pair of wings that actually go down. They're actually not hard to make. It's the cost of the wood, because if you get too flimsy wood, you need everything a lot lighter. And I did a blog a while ago on how to make the wings as well. One of my favourite costumes is I do a lot of op shopping. I'm going to go into that now. Okay, so another thing I like about steampunk is I've always been a bit of a greeny, eco sort of recycler thing, going to the op shops and stuff like that. And I like the fact that I can use something that's been thrown away or something that someone thinks is not useful and turn it into something that is useful and or beautiful. So I've been doing that for years and years and years, and now I get to do that with my steampunk clothing. Ged Mabry put a video up before about how he does find stuff in op shops, and I've actually got boxes. I don't know if you can see it here. This box here is full of different bits and pieces we found at op shops, and we actually add to costumes and stuff like that. And you can find things at garage sales. And this one here was totally made out of bits that were found, except for a couple bits. So this is my fairy eliminator, and if it's not going to work, it's stiff. Help. There we go. He knows how to do it. That's it. Okay, so it's a steampunk. It actually was a Nickelodeon goo gun or something, wasn't it? We found it for $2 at a garage sale, and I thought, aha, it looks exactly like those old pump action Mortine things. So we found different bits and pieces from the cheap shop. I had some leftover fake leather, got some bits of tubing. There's a little spider. It's that time of the year. And got some glitter to put in, so it shoots glitter. And tops of bottles that were added on, and things that were off broken. I think there was a foot pump or something like that, and that becomes a fairy steampunk, as fairy eliminator. So I actually ended up making a whole costume based on that, and that was real fun. And that's what I like about steampunk, is it is full of whimsy and fun. With other things, you can still have fun with historical recreation and stuff like that, but it's not as whimsical, and that's what I like about it. So op shopping, I'm a big op shopper. I've actually got a video on my YouTube about some of the op shop, an op shop trip we take occasionally, and I think there's another one coming up locally. We're going to go around the place, and I can find stuff to make something else out of, so that's pretty cool. So what else do I like about steampunk? Well, it's costuming and fun and research and more costuming, and there's got fun events. So we have events. I'll be talking more about events later tonight, and we'll getting people to share your events as well, and so that you can spruik it as much as you want. We're lucky we have a couple of local events. So we have the Steampunk Festival, which is usually September now, and that's held at the National Library, National Railways Museum, and it's so cool there. If you ever get a chance to go to that, it's at Port Adelaide, and it's got old trains there, and with the Steampunk Fair, we have costumes, and they encourage people taking photographs, and they have bands, and they have food, and they have people selling stuff. Like I sell my books there. I've had 2 of my book launches there, which I really love those guys because they're so helpful. So that's really fun. So we can talk about events later this evening as well. I'm going to have to look at your comments later because it's very hard to see it on the phone. I couldn't get it to work, my camera to work on the computer, so I'm doing it on the phone, and I'm looking down at my computer here, which is sort of deciding to not do something. Okay, so yeah, so I've actually loved science fiction and fantasy, but science fiction was my first love. I often tell people the story about how I vaguely remember being sat down by my dad and watching Doctor Who on the ABC, and we're talking 69 or something like that. So I've been watching Doctor Who for a long time, and that has a very steampunk feel about it. And then there's Star Wars and other things like that. So I love science fiction. Okay, so I've been reading science fiction, I've been drawing science fiction, we have bookshelves full of Heinlein and Gibson and Asimov, and then I've got the classics like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and stuff like that, and Dracula, and even the Gothic type books as well. So I'm into that sort of stuff. So I fell back into writing quite unexpectedly a couple of years ago. I used to do some writing, then I didn't, then I did, and I didn't. And I'm glad I did, because I'm much happier and much healthier since I've been writing now. And I get to indulge my love of steampunk and fantasy and other things as well. So part of the reading the science fiction is I actually have a Bachelor of Applied Science. And so I did mostly visual optics and stuff like that. So I love science, so I love researching, and I get to do the research. I get to do I get to actually play with science a bit. And the great thing about steampunk is I can play a little bit with science, and as long as it's mostly correct or believable, or often going by the way that Victorians thought things worked, and if you can make the rest of the world believable, then you can get away with little tweaks in science. What if this existed, and what if that actually did work, and stuff like that. So I really, really love writing, and I'm trying not to talk too fast because I get excited. And yeah, okay, so with writing steampunk, I get to do my logical science fiction-y stuff and add in the what if. And I often love the what if, as in, what if in history the reason for that particular thing happening was ... So that's a little bit how my first series, The Adventures of Viola, Stewart, started up. Partly it was because I had to quit work and it was a bit cathartic. I was writing about, I did horrible things, poor thing. I did horrible things to her, so, but I get I went a little bit darker than I probably would have if I had started rewriting. If I'd started rewriting and I hadn't been in that position, because I was really, really drowning in anxiety and stress at the time. So it's a little bit darker. So I wrote about Jack the Ripper, because everyone loves a Jack the Ripper story. A friend of mine who's a crime writer is a ripperologist, and I happened to be reading some. I was watching some Jack the Ripper documentaries, and she was in one. It was exciting. And at the same time I was listening, I was doing a school run, and I heard the song With Blue Eyes by The Who. Behind Blue Eyes by The Who. And it talks about, I'm the bad man behind blue eyes, and what about me? So I'm looking at it and going, what if I looked at Jack the Ripper as a bad guy from his point of view, and what if the reason he did what he did was because some nefarious steampunk, secret society type thing in a steampunk world was actually trying to get him to do what they wanted to for their reasons. So that's what I get to do. I get to pick something in history, and I go, what if this happened? So I actually get quite excited when that then happens. So I've got quite a few little things happening in my head there, which is quite sad, because at the moment, the basis of those ones is, someone's done look at that, it floats across the screen. It's a series where Viola Stewart, she's an optician, and she loves to drive a car. She gets a new one, a bicycle actually. She gets a plectocycle, which is a it's like a tricycle, and women were allowed to ride those in Victorian times, because there's certain things they were and weren't allowed to do. And she's a widow, so she's allowed to do some stuff that probably wouldn't be allowed to do normally. And she's allowed to own her own house and have her own job. So she actually studied to be a doctor, and wasn't allowed to be a doctor because Victorian times you weren't. So she went and became an optician instead, and she knows a lot of people, and she has adventures. She happened to go to, this name drop here, she happened to go to school in Edinburgh with Conan Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle, and he gets mentioned a couple of times in passing, so he gives her latest books and she gets all excited with mysteries and she finds mysteries all over the place. It has a slightly darker feel to it. It's still considered YA by the libraries. It's actually, you can actually get it in South Australian libraries, so it's on the library system, so you can borrow it. It's considered YA and it's under the mysteries section. I think they call it crime or crime mysteries section. It's a little bit dark when you do come in and meet Jack the Ripper and stuff like that, but there's no there's no obvious sex, and there's no graphic violence, and there's only one little tiny swear word in it, so it's not a very bad one though. But he's the bad guy, so that happens. So you can actually go and buy that from the library if you want to as well. So I'm currently writing the third book to that series. It's going to be called The Illusioneer. So it's obviously about illusionists and magicians and stuff like that in the Victorian times. And then when I finish that one, series 2, so the next book or series I'm going to be doing is called The Department of Curiosities, and it's actually more of a rollicking steampunk adventure. It's set in the same world, but a couple of years earlier, and it's probably not as dark as the first ones. I've also done, I love steampunk, and of course steampunk is often English or whatever like that, but I actually really want to write some more Australian stories. I've actually done 2 short stories set in Australia, up here in the Adelaide Hills, just locally actually. I do a lot of research, so I find a thing, I go and do the research into the actual history, and then when I've done a lot of research into the actual history, I start thinking, well, what can I change, what can I do fun things with, and then I think, oh, I can do that. So locally here, where I live, was one of the oldest townships in Adelaide and South Australia, of the colonists that came over. So I've actually got 2 short stories set up here in the Adelaide Hills. One is about a boy. It was for the Trail of Tales. So you can find it on a trailoftales.com. You have to have a Trail of Tales because there's one's very similar, and it was an Adelaide Fringe event done by the local council, and they did short stories and poems and stuff like that, and that was in 2016, I think, from memory. And also I've done another one set in, because there's a lot of gold mines and silver mines and copper, I think, as well, up in the hills, and you can actually still go and visit some of the old mines up there, which is really cool. And they actually, the local library sometimes has little road trips where you can go and visit the old buildings, and I did that a little while ago, which got me all interested, and I wrote the one All That Glitters, which is in, can I have the book over there please? So there's a steampunk group, a writers group I belong to called Scribbler's Den, and they were part of the steampunk empire. Now we're going to be talking about blogs and forums and stuff later this evening as well, and I'll be getting people to share as many as they can, because there's a lot of people who like steampunk but don't know where to go to talk about steampunk. Unfortunately, Steampunk Empire died recently. The whole site just crashed and we've lost it all, but now it's reborn as the Steampunk Dominion, and I think it's steampunkdominion.ning.com, I think. And Scribbler's Den is there again. It's actually a steampunk writers group, so there's people from all over the world there, and they did 2. Oh, it's back to front. Does anyone know how to mirror the thing on the phone? I will put links and pictures down the bottom, but we've done 2 anthologies. One was a short anthology available as ebook form on Smashwords called Den, and I'll post things down there, and it's available free as an ebook. And then the last, that was in 2016, we did it as an anniversary thing, as when the group started. We did Den of Antiquity, and this one has longer stories, and you can get it as an ebook, or you can get it in book form, and the money for that goes towards the charity that helps one of the cyclones that have, oh, isn't that terrible? It goes to charity. So I wrote All That Glitters in there, and it's about a woman who owns a mine up in the hills, and someone's trying to steal her gold. So that's about that one there. and I'm planning a few stories set in Australia.
Yay,
but
Australia.
we actually do have an amazing history here, so there's just so many ideas, and Australian writers, we write differently. We have a different way of thinking than overseas, and it's starting to get more popular for people to read Australian writers. Yay! So basically, I get excited about writing a lot. I get excited about steampunk. I love the fact, that there's lots of places you can go and talk to people about it. And yeah, so the main thing is steampunk is, there's no set rule for steampunk. You can have steampunk Star Wars, steampunk Doctor Who, steampunk. You can have steampunk light, as some people call it, with hardly any gadgets, and it's mostly sort of Victorian looking things. You can have it dripping with gadgets and fake arms and robotic this and that and thing, whatever you prefer. And that's the good thing about it, is there's no set rules. You can do what you want to do. And it's fun. I love the whimsy, and I think that has helped me a lot with the anxiety I get, because it's this whimsical thing, and there's no strict structural rules, and that's why I love steampunk. So yeah, if you want to see more pictures of my costumes or bits and pieces, or talk more books, you can always leave a message down here, and I'll try to get I'll try to get on to putting down some links down the bottom as well. So thank you for tuning in, or watching, or whatever you call it. And don't forget to talk about steampunk. It's fun. So yeah, thank you. Okay.